Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, anyways, I thought that I would talk about this again. I didn't think, all in all, that I was going to talk about this again, but overall, I think the reason why I have to is because there, of course, is a lot of misinformation that is being spread around. And of course, this is going to be about the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder third fight. And of course, this is going to be a video by Dante's Boxing Nation. And he's going to be talking about recently what Joe Rogan said about the alleged long count that Tyson Fury got. And a certain amount of people commented on it and what they thought was an alleged long count when it comes down to it. But the bottom line is this, a lot of these guys, especially these LDBC and new media guys, because they are a pro-black cult and they're very, very over-emotional when it comes down to it, they'll basically allege anything to basically say that some of their favorite fighters got screwed over. And, if you want to say certain things along the lines of, certain black fighters, all in all, that, they don't get treated as well by certain media outlets as some of the other demographics, I think that would be fair to say. If you want to say, all in all, that, some of them get disrespected by the fans or by other media outlets, I don't think that that would be an incorrect thing to say. But when you go as far to say things like, well, Tyson Fury and Canelo Alvarez and all these other fighters, the only reason why they win these fights or the only reason why they're ranked so highly is because they have the complexion for the protection. And all in all, that's why Tyson Fury was allowed to cheat and he got this long count and Deontay Wilder should have won. All you're doing is just spreading a whole bunch of uneducated misinformation. Because, excuse me, like I said in the first place, a lot of these guys, like Dante's Boxing Nation, whether they truly believe in some of the things that they say, who the hell knows? I think personally that he does. But who the hell knows? They could be just doing this for a bunch of views and money as well. Probably maybe a little bit of both. But when it comes down to it, all in all, like I said, that is a bunch of misinformation. Now, are certain Caucasian fighters or Latino fighters treated better or slightly more protected by the media than maybe black fighters could be? Yeah, maybe you could say something like that. Like I said, there is such a thing as big white hypes. There always has been that when it comes down to it. Not even in just boxing, but in other sports as well. But when you're going to allege something like, well, Tyson Fury is so protected and that's the only reason why he's won all these big fights, I'm sorry, but you just don't really have any idea what the hell you're talking about. And these guys, like Dante's Boxing Nation and all these other guys, they really just react off of their emotions. So with what they say, to the basic person when it comes down to it, someone overall who basically is also a part of that pro-black cult mentality, sure, it'll make sense to them and it sounds smart to them because they're not too smart either. But when it comes down to a logical person, someone who actually, thinks things through, and when we actually bring up certain examples, if Caucasian fighters were so vastly protected by boxing, at least the way that overall you allege that they are, why did Teofimo Lopez get the decision over Vasyl Lomachenko? Why did Andre Ward get the benefit of the doubt in that first fight in a very close and competitive fight over Sergey Kovalev? Why, all in all, has there been a multitude of decisions that have happened like that? Why did Deontay Wilder get a draw in the first fight against Tyson Fury in a fight that he clearly should have lost? But no one is going to bring up these fights. Now, has there been certain fights, all in all, to where certain black fighters, maybe they got done the wrong way? Sure, of course. But you can argue that that's happened to a certain amount of fighters. It is what it is. Bottom line is this. When we actually take a look at which fighters usually get the benefit of the doubt, it's not usually Caucasian fighters. So it is what it is. Now, Canelo Alvarez, I suppose you can say all in all that you could maybe argue that he's a Caucasian Hispanic if you wanted to, but a lot of people also would argue that he's mainly a Hispanic or someone overall that is of mestizo, I believe, descent, which I believe means, of mixed culture when it comes down to it, or mixed descent. But, some of you Latinos out there know what I'm talking about. Once again, I'm not Latino myself, so I can't comment on it too much. But Canelo Alvarez, even though you could count him as a Caucasian Hispanic, you could tell overall that he does have mixed heritage. It is what it is. Anyways, Dante's Boxing Nation, he's going to be talking about the alleged long count, and I'm going to be tuning in. Let's see what he has to say.
But there was some controversy about this fight. And one of the controversies was the extremely long counts when Tyson Fury went down. Cormier believes Fury benefited from crazy slow count. That's right, after being knocked down by Wilder. Daniel Cormier believes the referee made a bad call in the fourth round versus Fury versus Wilder 3. Well, he's correct. This is what happened.
No, he's not correct, and you're not correct either. There's no offense against Joe Rogan, but he really should stick to MMA or a subject where he really knows what the hell he's talking about. Because he doesn't really know what the hell he's talking about when it comes to this conversation. There's no offense against him, but a lot of people, when it comes to the rules of boxing, they don't seem to know the basic rules. And they'll say, all in all, well, is a 10 count pretty much just up for debate? Why do they even have a 10 count then? A 10 count is something that is somewhat subjective. I'm not saying all in all that it should be slow as molasses. But I don't think all in all that that's basically what the referee was doing. The referee had the same count for both Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. And part of the reason why that second count was a bit slower is because Deontay Wilder left his neutral corner. And that rule has been in boxing pretty much ever since, I really can't even remember which time frame, but I believe somewhere after the Jack Dempsey or after the Jack Johnson era, somewhere around there. Because when they didn't have the neutral corner rule, but boxers could basically just go in there right as soon as boxers could stand straight up and then just beat the shit out of them again. The point of that neutral corner rule is to give the boxer somewhat of a break or a chance to recover when it comes down to it, so they don't just get knocked out immediately. It is what it is, or beat to shit, basically immediately. That's the point of the neutral corner. So when a boxer goes out of a neutral corner, which is exactly what Deontay Wilder did, all right, he went out of his neutral corner a little bit. The referee had to pause the count. He said, go back to your neutral corner. And then Tyson Fury, he was able to get up within the next few seconds. So it is what it is. That's how boxing works. So there's no offense against Joe Rogan or a certain amount of these other people. But you really have to know the rules of boxing before you actually commentate on them. Because a lot of these guys, they don't really know what the hell they're talking about. It is what it is.
Count is supposed to, the referee is supposed to go 1, 2 when the guy goes down. But if for any reason he has to interrupt the count because the fighter, the opponent needs to be told to go to the neutral corner, you're supposed to pick up the count where the ringside counter has it. So there's a guy who's
You are to a degree, but once again, if that opponent leaves his neutral corner, then the count stops. And you can see Kenny Bayless state this all in all to Tyson Fury a little bit back. You can hear him state this to other fighters, or other referees state this to other fighters. Once again, these guys, these Deontay Wilder fans, Dante, an alleged Deontay Wilder fan, because once again, he already threw him under the bus. But when it came down to it all in all, like I said, these guys, they claim that every single referee helped out with Tyson Fury. Well, how is every referee helping out Tyson Fury? First, it was Jack Reese, and the excuse they made there was because he was trying to, he was a Caucasian man, and Tyson Fury was a Caucasian man, so that's the reason why they stood him up. Then second was a black referee by Kenny Bayless, someone who they've really never had any problem with, and allegedly, he was cheating for Tyson Fury. And this time it was a Latino referee, I believe Sergio Mora, or Russell Mora, excuse me, and, apparently he cheated. So it's like, come on, man, how many referees are really cheating for Tyson Fury? Like, come on.
Counting ringside, and he'll keep the count going. So if you're at 1, 2, and then you're like, go to a neutral corner, that guy's supposed to be like 3, 4, 5.
As it should.
No, you're wrong, Joe. Because when someone overall leaves their neutral corner, the count stops. And the reason why it stops is because you're not supposed to do that.
But he didn't.
Oh.
He went back to it. 3, 4, but the guy had already been down for a couple seconds. Without a doubt, it was a long count.
That's bullshit.
It's
That's
bullshit.
the problem with boxing, though. That's what people have a problem with. That's considered kind of like bullshit.
It's
one. No, problem with boxing is that boxing does have a lot of corruption, and there's just not a whole lot of order because there's so many different sanctions. That's the problem with boxing, but it is what it is.
One of two things: it's either a mistake and the guy made an error, or maybe there's a. I don't think there's a different law in Vegas. I don't think there's a rule that allows them to do that. I think it's an error or corruption. It shouldn't be up to the referee to count. It shouldn't be, he can go 1, 2, 3, or he can go 1, 2. It shouldn't be that.
Right, but not many referees do like the slow count overall, in the second one. But like I said, when you actually take a look at a lot of 10-second counts, very rarely is a 10-second count. Like a lot of these guys like Deontay and all these other guys, they'll say, see, it was over 10 seconds, on a timer. A 10-second count in boxing is not an actual 10 seconds on a timer. That's what a lot of these dudes don't understand because they don't know anything about boxing. It is what it is.
There should be a count.
Right.
It should be 10 seconds.
And if you think overall that there should be a rule change, well, then that's up to you. If you want to make it to where there is a timer and maybe all in all they can watch a replay and see all in all if he gets up, but I just don't see how that's going to work. To be honest with you, I think the way that boxing is right now, I think that it works fine. Because I think all in all that sometimes, those counts, they may need to be a little bit more than 10 seconds all in all just to keep a good fight going. But it is what it is. But all in all, Tyson Fury, did he get this, 20-second count that a lot of people are trying to allege? No, absolutely not. It is what it is.
And there should be like a LCD screen.
Yeah.
And when a guy goes down, it starts at 10. And when when it gets to, or it starts at 1 or 0, whatever.
I feel like,
without a doubt, like a gap where he was directing some stuff inside the ring, and then he came back and picked up the count. So it was definitely long. The question is, could Fury have gotten up? Maybe, but could he have gotten up 2 seconds earlier, 3 seconds earlier, whatever the extra count was, and could Wilder have jumped on him and hurt him again? Yeah, that's possible too. You don't know. I mean, when a guy gets that hurt, if you give him
well, then Deontay Wilder should have not left his neutral corner.
any extra time is a bonus. Any 3 seconds, 4 seconds, that makes a big difference.
Crypto.com Visa card. A metal card. Powered by crypto.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So Joe Rogan, he must know by now, he has pissed off a lot of the racist fans by saying what he actually said. Something that actually was true. And
no, it wasn't true. It's no offense against Joe Rogan, but Joe Rogan should stick to what he knows, which really ain't much, but, it is what it is. Joe Rogan, I have a certain amount of respect for him, but, he doesn't know that much about boxing.
Made a whole lot of sense. Joe Rogan, he said that long count was either an error or it was corruption.
Which it wasn't either. Like I said, Deontay Wilder, he left his neutral corner. You can go ahead and look up the rules for yourself if you don't believe me. Go ahead and look it up. All right. Once again, if a fighter leaves their neutral corner, the count stops.
You could clearly tell the reason why he said it was either an error or it was corruption because he was trying to be politically correct when he said it. Now, Joe Rogan has already said things where he caught a lot of backlash. I mean, this is also the same man who said he believes the hate that John Jones receives is because of racism. And boy...
Well, you know what? When it comes down to it, I think that that's partially true, but let's be real. And I have nothing against John Jones personally, but there's some athletes, there's some people out there all in all that they're just pieces of shit. They're just pieces of shit. And it's no offense against John Jones, but he's really a piece of shit person. I mean, how many shit overall is he going to have to do? Not only has this man, not only has this man been caught on PEDs like 3 separate times, he's hit a pregnant woman with his car. There's been allegations overall to where he just recently beat up his fiance. And who the fuck knows? Usually a lot of the times I'm a little bit more, okay, well, we have to look into it. But let me tell you what, I haven't looked into it, so I'm not going to say for certain. But would it shock me at all if John Jones had any violence against his fiance? No, it wouldn't. John Jones is just... that dude overall is suffering from a lot of demons. John Jones is not a good person. Now, of course, is there other people that are not very good people as well, like a Conor McGregor, and he doesn't receive the same amount of hate? To a degree, yeah. But Conor McGregor also does receive a certain amount of hate as well.
Those racists, they went in on Joe Rogan when he exposed that. I mean, he received so much backlash from that, from the MMA world, that he had to come back and revise what he said. He didn't retract it, but he revised it. This is the reason why Joe Rogan is being very careful the way he words this. Joe Rogan is not the only person that's saying this, and when I say he's not the only one, he's not the only person who's not black.
Right, but when you take a look at this overall, a certain amount of these people, and I'm not sure if Teddy Atlas even said that, all these other guys are MMA fighters. It's no offense, but most of these MMA fighters, they don't know shit about boxing. It is what it is.
See, because when black people like myself, when we say the same things that Joe Rogan says, they attack the race, the black race. But of course, when Joe Rogan says it, they'll ignore the fact that Joe is saying it and still attack the black messenger. But no matter how much these racists cry, as long as you keep coming to this channel, you're going to...
So when it comes down to the overall, like I said, Dante, if a Caucasian man says something that you don't agree with, you're a person overall that does not attack the race. You're a person overall that does not allege that they're a racist. It is what it is. I'm not saying that it's right what they do, but once again, Dante, he always tries to separate himself from the races. Dante, you're one of the biggest racists out there. Like, just, once again, it always makes me laugh.
to keep getting the truth, regardless if you like it or not. I mean, if it was up to me, I prefer them to actually stay off my channel because they're really not invited here. But hey, if they're addicted to watching DVN, so...
I don't agree with that. I think actually you like it. I think all in all that, I think you like a little bit of drama. I think all in all that you like that victim mentality. So actually, if a certain amount of these racists or a certain amount of these people were not putting negative comments on his channel, I don't think he'd be anywhere. I don't think all in all that, he'd be nearly as happy. That's my opinion. Because a lot of these guys like Aki TV and Dante's Boxing Nation and Boxing Ego, they get off on that victim mentality. And certain people, when they have a victim mentality or they're always looking others to blame, they always need someone overall to be a negative influence in their life. That's why sometimes, you see certain people in bad relationships or something because all in all, they always need a reason to why their life is going down the shitter. They can't blame themselves. They have to blame everyone else around them. Dante is one of those people. Dante is one of those guys that, don't get me wrong. It's great he has his own platform. But Dante is another one of these super duper, woke victim mentality guys. He's not going to help anyone out.
Be it. And once again, I always want to make it clear. When I talk about these race fans, I'm talking about the ones in America. I'm not talking about UK fans. Because by default, they're supposed to root for Tyson Fury, and they're supposed...
Right, so once again, Dante, you're telling me that if Jamal Charlo and Caleb Plant were to fight tomorrow, you're telling me that you're going to cheer for both of them because they're both American. You're not going to have any bias for Jamal Charlo whatsoever. Like, come on. As you would say, Dante, we know what time it is. Get the fuck out of here, man. Like, come on.
To defend Tyson Fury no matter what the truth is, right? So, I mean, and honestly, I don't even care if some of those guys are racist, because once again, by default, you're supposed to root for your own country. The only country that doesn't do this...
I really don't give a shit overall to root for my own country. That's not me saying that I don't like the USA, but I'm not a person overall that is so dearly attached to that, to where I'm just going to 100% root for them constantly. I've just never been a person that has been like that. Don't get me wrong, I root for my own here and there, and I root for the U.S. and all that stuff, but I've never been a person overall that has been super duper attached to the point to where I feel like I have to be very, very biased or, and the reason why I'm not like that is because that would ruin my objectivity and logic. It is what it is. Don't get me wrong, it's okay to cheer for your own, but when you take it to the extent of, being very over emotional or racially biased or having a very huge racial investment like Dante here, as you can see, it ruins your objectivity.
The whole wide world is America, and we know why. It's funny because I had a couple people respond to me always talking about how America is the only country that roots against their own country. And a couple people, they said to me, hey, man, why...
Well, a big part of the reason why that is because America, they have some of the most dominant athletes in the world. When you take a look at almost every single sport, the most dominant athlete there is usually going to be American. Now, if we were more, say, like Britain or something like that, then I think all in all that maybe it would be a little bit different. But when you take a look at boxing, MMA, when you take a look overall at a certain amount of other fighters, or when you take a look at a certain amount of other sports, they don't usually care. Like if you take a look at track and field, or if you're going to look at the Olympics, most Americans, they're actually probably not going to cheer for Justin Gatlin over Usain Bolt. They're probably going to cheer for Usain Bolt because he's looked at as the best. When you take a look at tennis, Now certain people, they may cheer for the American. Of course, Serena Williams, she probably is the most rooted for. But if you had an American tennis player, for example, who more than likely would probably be Caucasian, because for whatever reason, the Caucasians, they seem to be more dominant in that sport. Of course, there's some very, very great black players or other great players as well, but usually that sport is ruled by the Caucasians. But when it comes down to it overall, let's say you were to have a dominant American Caucasian player. I can't really think of one right now to this point right now that at least that plays today. But let's say they were to face Roger Federer or Rafael Nadal or possibly even Novak Djokovic. Now, Novak Djokovic, there's a grudge against him for whatever reason. So maybe they wouldn't cheer for Novak Djokovic over him. But there is a certain amount of Americans that would. They certainly would cheer for Roger Federer over that person. It is what it is.
To be based on country, how come we can't just root for the guy who's the better skill fighter, et cetera, right? And I said, well, if that's the case, how come you guys never rooted for Floyd Mayweather? You see, guys, no matter how hard they try to justify their position, they always end up exposing themselves and letting us know who they really are and what they are.
I am a person, all in all, that usually roots for the more talented fighter. And that's why I a little bit rooted for Tyson Fury in this fight. And at times I did root for Floyd Mayweather Jr. as well. Another one of my favorite fighters out there is Terrence Crawford. Another one of my favorite fighters to watch, all in all. I'm trying to think who else is my favorite. Alexander Usyk, of course. Anthony Joshua, even though he has limitations. I'm trying to think who else is out there. Canelo Alvarez, of course. Canelo, It's hard not to root for those guys, in my opinion, because they are very, very talented.
With that being
Errol Spence Jr. as well.
Said, you had a lot of people, once again, that have been talking about the quote-unquote corruption/era that the referee was involved in when it came to this 10-second count. And I want to say this, when I did my last video, I said 10-second count, and I had about maybe 2 or 3 people in the comment section saying, hey man, it's a 10 count, not a 10-second count. So I responded to...
Which is exactly what that is. But because you don't know shit about boxing, you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
One dude, and I said, 10 what? What are they counting to? 10 seconds, 10 minutes, 10 hours? And he never responded to the question. 10 count is short.
Yes, it's supposed to be 10 seconds, you moron. But when it comes down to it all in all, the point being overall is this. It's not an actual 10 seconds that you would usually see on a timer. All right? It is what it is. Like I said, 10 seconds, say in a basketball game or in a football game, that's on a legitimate timer. Boxing is not one of those things. It's not, unless you're talking about the actual round, then no, it's not on a timer.
For 10 seconds that you're counting to. So just for education purposes, it doesn't matter if you want to use 10 count.
Education purposes. Deontay, you shouldn't be educating anybody because you don't know what the hell you're talking about. The reason why I'm reviewing your video is because of education purposes. Overall, to show how goddamn fool you are. Because you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Education purposes.
For short, or you want to say the whole thing, 10-second count. With that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the controversial knockdown, where once again there was a long count. And by the way, the picture you guys see on the screen, this is just a couple people that talked about this long count. Now, when it comes to Teddy Atlas, he just wasn't impressed with Tyson Fury's performance, and he felt that this was actually Deontay Wilder's fight to win. And it's kind of surprising.
Really? That's interesting. I thought Teddy Atlas hated Deontay Wilder. I thought Teddy Atlas was this alleged racist, Dante. You've been trying to allege this whole entire time that Teddy Atlas hates Deontay Wilder. Who knows? Maybe he does, but every time I've seen him talk about Deontay Wilder, he's always talked about him with massive respect. So, once again, Dante, these dudes overall, they'll allege anything.
And he would say this because Teddy Atlas is not a fan of Wilder's at all. In fact, he's a big fan.
Really? So, what proof do you have of that? Now, maybe I just haven't seen it, but every time I've heard Teddy Atlas talk about Deontay Wilder, it actually seemed like he was rooting for Deontay Wilder. But it is what it is.
And it's Tyson Fury's. Okay, once again, let's go ahead and get back into this count. So, first of all, if you are to count to 10 seconds by the time that Tyson Fury hits the canvas, without a doubt he was on the canvas for more than 10 seconds. That part is not even up for debate. Where the debate comes in is...
Sure, you can argue that he was down on the ground for more than 10 seconds, but the problem is, Dante, is that that's 10 seconds on an actual timer. The boxing 10 count is not actual 10 seconds like on a timer. That's why they don't have timers in boxing. It's up to the referee. And if an opponent leaves a neutral corner, the count has to stop. It is what it is. Like, this dude, man.
When some people say, hey, man, well, the referee, he doesn't have to start counting until the fighter moves to the neutral corner, right? Let me go ahead and break this all down with complete facts. About 50 years ago, that was actually true. That they did have to wait until the fighter went to the neutral corner to either continue to count or...
Well, you still have to wait for them to go to the neutral corner. The thing is that they continue the count, but if the opponent leaves the neutral corner, then the count stops.
Or start the count.
And that's the facts.
Even Larry Merchant, he actually read the rules on air as he was calling a fight to confirm that the referee is supposed to start counting once the fighter is down. And just like Joe Rogan said, if he loses count or if he gets distracted any kind of way, it's up to the timekeeper to continue counting.
Right, but if the fighter leaves their neutral corner, then the count stops. And that's what you're missing. Because once again, Dante, you don't know shit about boxing.
Exactly where the referee left off. I'm going to go ahead and play this clip of what Larry Merchant said exactly. Check it out.
The rule. When a contestant is knocked down, the referee shall audibly announce the count as he motions with his right arm downward, indicating the end of each second of the count. If the contestant taking the count is still down when the referee calls the count of 10, the referee will wave both arms, indicating that the contestant has been knocked out.
So there it is. Larry Merchant confirms that Tyson Fury, he should have been knocked out. And if this is...
So why don't you play the clip that Kenny Bayless told Tyson Fury all in all, to where he said, if the opponent overall moves out of the neutral corner, I'll stop the count. Why don't you play that clip?
The case, that means he should have been knocked out in the first fight and the third fight. But just to
the first fight wasn't even actual 10 seconds, even on a timer.
hammer the point, I want to show you guys this clip of Floyd Mayweather knocking out Victor Ortiz. In this clip, I'm going to show you guys, I'm going to set it up for you. If you notice, in the picture I'm showing you right now, you can see the timekeeper at the bottom of the screen. And you see the referee, he's looking at the timekeeper to make sure he knows the exact count, right?
Right, but did Floyd Mayweather Jr. leave his neutral corner?
Now I'm going to go ahead and play this clip. And the main thing I want you guys to notice here is notice the referee never even looks at where Floyd Mayweather is at. He starts counting immediately.
He never looks where Floyd Mayweather Jr. is at. Well, that could be also because Joe Cortez was a little bit of a fan of Mayweather. But on top of that, when it comes down to, but I'm not going to spread that. When it comes down to it all in all, bottom line is this. Floyd Mayweather Jr. did not leave his neutral corner. It is a job of the referee to also look in the corner of the other fighter, because if the fighter leaves his neutral corner, which is what Deontay Wilder did, the count has to stop. You see how Floyd Mayweather Jr. never left his neutral corner?
And that right there, guys, is what you call a proper count to 10. Shout out to Southpaw. You guys go ahead and subscribe to his YouTube channel. He's somebody else that speaks nothing but the whole truth. But he...
Southpaw? This dude's Southpaw, and there's a reason why I've never reviewed any of his videos. Southpaw, man, go ahead and watch his channel if you guys want to. Southpaw is one of the dumbest motherfuckers out there. Like, hands down. This dude, every time he breaks down a fight, this man has no idea what the hell he's talking about. He's hands down one of the biggest racially motivated racists out there. No doubt about it. Go ahead and check out his channel. That dude is fucking crazy.
He used an excellent analogy when it comes to this 10 count. In basketball, they have the 24-second clock. Once a team gets the ball, they have exactly 24 seconds to put up a shot. But in basketball, they don't have a referee trying to count the 24 seconds. They have a clock for that.
Yes, they have a clock for that. Here's the problem. Boxing, when you talk about an actual count, it's not always actual 10 seconds. I've already explained this in another video, but oh boy.
And that's the same thing they need to implement when it comes to boxing.
Deontay really is a really simple dude. Like, this dude really, man, if he truly believes in a lot of the stuff that he says, this man is one of the biggest idiots out there. I mean, goddamn.
We need to have a clock soon as a fighter hits the ground. I mean, you can still have a timekeeper, but a clock should be there as well. Because that way...
I don't agree with that, and some people, all in all, may disagree. Now, of course, has there been certain long counts in the past, like Buster Douglas versus Mike Tyson or Sonny Liston versus Muhammad Ali? Yeah. But when it comes down to it, all in all, I don't think that a timer actually is going to help out the sport. And a certain amount of people, they may disagree. But the reason why I think that is because when you have two great championship fighters, you know, let's say you were to have Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr., you know, you want something overall to be, in my opinion, a little bit over 10 seconds. You want to give great championship fighters a chance to get back in the fight. You don't always want to count out certain fighters unless you know for sure that they're done. That doesn't mean that you have to give them 4 extra seconds, but that the 10 count overall should at least be somewhat consistent and not, say, a fast count. That's why I say, you know, a 10 count in boxing, it's not this, you know, sure, it's somewhat relative to 10 seconds, but usually it's around, let's say, 11, 11.5, maybe even 12 seconds when you consider it on a timer. Probably about 11 seconds when it comes down to it, because it gives the fighter overall a chance to get back up and get back in the fight.
There would never be an era. I mean, what's the point of calling it a 10 count when it can really be a 15 count or a 20?
Right, but that Tyson Fury count was not a 15 count. Just stop. And once again, Deontay Wilder left his neutral corner. So if he overall is going to, you know, go with that narrative overall of, well, it was a slow count, well, you have no one else to blame but yourself.
Count. It defeats the purpose of having the rule, and it defeats the purpose of having a timekeeper. And it also robs people of victories that they could have had. The most important thing, right? So for anyone listening to this video that has connections...
I remember when Tony Harrison and Jamel Charlo in their rematch. I remember when Jack Reeves, when he had the same count against Tony Harrison in that Jamel Charlo rematch. And none of these pro-blacks, like Dante's Boxing Nation, none of these other idiots that were a part of the pro-black cult, none of them overall, you know, basically complained about how Tony Harrison got that same count. You know, they only care when it's Tyson Fury. Because, once again, Deontay, he's living in a real-world nightmare right now. Both heavyweight champions are Caucasian. That had to be one of the biggest possible nightmarish outcomes in his head. So it is what it is.
With the commissions and the referees and everyone else in charge, see if you guys can help push this idea of having an actual 10-second clock. Matter of fact, to really make things live and make sense.
Well, overall, that's up to you. I don't personally think overall that it helps out the sport of boxing. And the reason why I think that is all in all is because, sure, the 10 count needs to be at about a relative 10 seconds. But if we start going things off of a timer, you know, like I said, that may lose a chance for certain fighters to get back up and get back into the fight. So it is what it is. You know, I can't think of any fights off the top of my head just besides the Fury-Deontay Wilder fight, where I guess the Tony Harrison versus Jamel Charlo fight. Now, of course, Jamel, he ended up winning that fight anyway. But that ended up being a very decent fight. Once again, you don't always want a certain amount of these fights to end up stopping early unless it actually is relatively clear that that fighter is completely out of it and that fighter has at least been down for a pretty decent 10 count.
They could even have the timekeeper on the microphone so the whole arena could hear the count soon as the fighter hits the canvas. See, guys, if you were wondering, the reason why you have so many MMA fighters that are coming out and saying, hey, man, this doesn't look right, and they're talking about the long count.
Because they don't know shit about boxing, that's why. Because there's no count in MMA. All they have is, a certain amount of seconds for the round. They don't have any long counts. When they get knocked down or knocked out, the fight is stopped. All right? Or not knocked down, but all in all, if they get knocked out, like if that fighter is clearly knocked out, that fight is stopped. There is no 10 count.
It's because in UFC and MMA, they don't have anyone that can just bend the rules like this for a particular fighter. Only in the wild.
Actually, that's not true. Because Herb Dean, when I seen him with Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov, actually, he did let Conor McGregor somewhat do some dirty tricks in that fight, like hold on to Khabib Nurmagomedov's gloves, or overall hold his toes or hold his hands into the cage. And Herb Dean was not supposed to do that. But in my opinion, Dana White probably told Herb Dean, let some shit slide. Because Conor McGregor is going to have to get some extra things in there if he's going to beat Khabib. Because I think he knew, just like I knew, Conor is not going to beat Khabib.
West of boxing, do we see things like this take place? Hopefully we get that 10-second clock going. Speaking of bending the rules for a particular fighter, do you guys know how easy it would be for a boxer or his team, his promoter, whoever, to pay off the referee and say, look, man, if my guy gets dropped, just count as slow as possible. Start looking around like you confused. Stop the count. Whatever you do.
I'm not saying that that's impossible, Deontay, but come on. You know how many things we can allege that with other fighters? Like, come on. At the end of the day, Russell Mora, I thought overall gave a decent count. He did his job.
Give him more time to get up. And the referee could easily be like, okay, that's easy. That's easy to do because we do that all the time. But if you're going to pay me to do it, that's even better. So at the end of the day, man, it's time for us to remove all the corruption from the sport of boxing.
Right, but that's not really corruption. Once again, the only long count that I can remember for sure that I thought, wow, that was really unnecessary, or the only two. One was the Buster Douglas versus Mike Tyson fight, and another one also was the Ali versus Liston rematch. Like, Liston was down for a very, very long time. But it is what it is.
That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. All right, now check this out, guys.
That's pretty much all I got for today as well. But I just thought that I would commentate on that because, once again, a lot of misinformation overall spreading about this narrative, which once again is not true. No, there was not a super duper long count. And once again, Deontay Wilder left his neutral corner. So it is what it is. But anyways, when it comes down to it, that's really about it for today. We'll see all know what happens with both Deontay Wilder's and Tyson Fury's career. And that'll be it for today. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.